Minister to move.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that the committee has considered the Russia Sanctions EU Exit Amendments Regulation 2022. The instrument before us was laid on Thursday, the 10th of February 2022, under the powers provided by the Sanctions and Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2018, also known as the Sanctions Act. We lay this instrument to strengthen our response to the grave situation that we see in Ukraine. My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, has set out today the implications of Russia's actions, and he has also set out our initial response via the sanctions regime. Russia's actions are threatening innocent people in Ukraine, violating its sovereignty and undermining its security and stability, as well, indeed, as the security and stability of Europe. President Putin must be halted in those ambitions, and we will use every lever under our control to that end. We will continue to work with our allies and partners to force him to halt the path of aggression. We are acting, Mr Deputy Speaker, in 4 ways. Firstly, we are providing direct support to Ukraine, and this is, in our view, a moral duty. We've already sent defensive weapons to Ukraine. We have trained over 22,000 troops to Operation Orbital, and we're considering what further acts of support we can provide, including through our new trilateral partnership with Poland and Ukraine. We're also providing economic support. Last week, my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, announced that we will be increasing our support to Ukraine by £100 million. And we are working closely with partners to ensure that we can quickly provide emergency humanitarian assistance if that is needed. Sadly, Mr Deputy Speaker, we could see a large-scale loss of life, large-scale displacement of people, destruction of vital civilian infrastructure, including schools and hospitals. So it's vital that the humanitarian response is ready to go, and we will continue to lead on this effort. Secondly, we're providing political support to Ukraine. We're working diplomatically to condemn Russia's aggression at every level. Please.
And I'm grateful that he's emphasised the need for humanitarian support very early in this motion, because we are dealing with punitive actions. But the Prime Minister himself said in his statement that in a worst-case scenario, 44 million people could get pulled into a very aggressive war. That would be a refugee crisis. So what specific support is the British government and its partners offering to provide to those neighbouring countries of Ukraine who would have to deal with the disposition of those individuals leaving Ukraine?
Thank the honourable gentleman for the question. I'm not able to give specifics at this point, but we are liaising closely. I myself have spoken with our ambassadors in neighbouring countries. The Foreign Secretary has been holding regular conversations with her opposite numbers in the region and beyond, and we are ready to respond to what could be a range of options, depending on whether or not we, as the international community, are successful or otherwise in deterring further incursions into Ukraine.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way. Can I just follow up the question well posed by the right honourable member for Chingford and Woodford Green earlier? The package of sanctions that have been announced today, specifically, what is that designed to deter? What is the ultimatum that is being sent to the Russian government today? Very good.
I will come to more details of the sanction package, what we hope to achieve with it, but ultimately what we are looking to achieve is to prevent further territorial encroachment and aggression into Ukraine, and get Russian troops to withdraw back to Russia, and then ultimately to de-escalate and move away from the Ukrainian border. The point is, and I'll make this later on in the speech if the House will give me an opportunity to progress, that we are working closely and coordinating closely in our sanctions response with our international partners to ensure their maximum effectiveness. I will give way and then I'll try and make some more progress.
Because it's very relevant. I don't mean to put the Minister on the spot because I have the advantage of looking at what the news has just said, but Putin has just now recognise the whole of the Donbass as independent, which goes beyond the ceasefire line and into the territory now held by the Ukrainian government. So therefore, what we've already announced is already out of date. I appreciate he may need to confer, but are the sanctions that are currently being discussed in this statement appropriate? Or is there that rate? What is the trigger point for an escalation of sanctions? Because it was very clear that this House was not satisfied with what was brought earlier today.
Mr Deputy Speaker, one of the things that I will go on to explain to the House is that in the legislation that we are discussing today, the SI we are discussing today, it is a framework which allows us to deploy a range of measures, and as I will also make the point later on in my speech, is that we are also giving ourselves further legislative vehicles by which we can impose sanctions, punitive sanctions on Russia. I'll give way.
I'm very grateful to him for giving way. I mean, everything we've heard today has suggested the government have started from a point of view of saying, here's some sanctions, we know you're going to do more, and when you do more, we're going to do more. It couldn't be much more feeble in terms of the message that's come from this place. And I appreciate what the Minister has said about the conversations that he's having with partners across the West. Will he, in those conversations, make sure that they know that the resolute opinion of this House is that the sanctions that have happened so far are only a start, and much more strong action needs to come for the sake of Ukraine and for the sake of President Putin getting that message?
Mr Deputy Speaker, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, earlier on today spoke in praise of the unanimity of voice that we experienced in the House, and I want to echo that, and I want to give the House, him, the honourable lady, the other honourable and right honourable members, the absolute assurance that we regard this as the start of a range of sanctions which we can escalate in response to what Russia does. Our desire is to deter further aggression. We have said right from the start, and in the intelligence that has been declassified and put in the public domain, that we were highly concerned that an encroachment purely into the Donbass was not the ultimate limit of Putin's aggressive ambitions, and that we would act to try and deter further aggression. And I can absolutely, I'm going to make some progress. I can absolutely assure the House that we will use this range of, we'll use this sanctions and other sanctions legislation that we might bring forward to deter further actions and to encourage Russia to de-escalate. I do give way to my right.
Forgive me, and I'm very content with the leadership shown, but the question I want to understand more clearly is, are we deterring President Putin? Is the desire to deter President Putin from doing more, or is the idea to get President Putin to step back? Because I'm not altogether clear, and therefore that means the force of the sanctions is dictated by what we're trying to do, and I'd just love to hear what we are actually trying to do.
Makes a very good point. Let me make it absolutely clear. Our aim is to prevent further aggression, for Russian troops to withdraw from where they have advanced, and for them to move away from the Ukrainian border and remove that threat from the Ukrainian people. There's a series of events, and I will explain if you give me the opportunity to. I will give way.
My right honourable friend, and he'll know from his own career in the army that the principle of clout, don't dribble, is an important one to make sure that the opposition understands that you're serious. Does he not agree that the ratchet could be misinterpreted as giving a free pass at an early stage rather than drawing a clear line that needs not to be crossed?
My honourable and gallant friend makes a point which I fully understand, and I can assure him government fully understands, and the pace at which we, in conjunction with our international partners, ratchet up our sanctions response is very much to not just send a message, although sending a message is important, but to actually ensure these sanctions are meaningfully felt by the Russian leadership and those people around Vladimir Putin funding him and propping him up. I'm going to make some progress. I will give, trust me, I will give the gentleman an opportunity to intervene later on. As I say, we are providing political support to Ukraine. My right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, is in close and regular contact with the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, Dmytro Kuleba, and other friends and allies around the world. And I pay tribute to our Ambassador, Melinda Simmons, and her team, who remain in Ukraine, operating from the British Embassy's office in Lviv, providing what support we can for those British nationals still in the country. Thirdly, we are leading on the strategic communications response to Russian actions. At every stage, working closely with our international partners, we have exposed President Putin's plans, his lies, his false flag activities, and we've exposed them for what they are: a pretext for aggression, an attempt to justify what is in every respect unjustifiable. Last week, I highlighted the falsehoods put forward by Vladimir Putin at the United Nations Security Council. I will.
I'm very, very grateful. One of the problems with the government's argument, it seems to me, is that President Putin has already said that the whole of the Donbass is now effectively to be either independent or part of Russia. Two-thirds of that territory is presently held by Ukrainians and a third by separatists. That is an incursion already. It feels as if what we've announced today by way of sanctions is remarkably puny. And yet it feels also as if we're not going to do anything more if they just stick with this. Does the Minister not understand the anxiety that there is, I think, across the House?
I have a huge amount of respect for the honourable gentleman. He knows that we speak when the cameras aren't rolling, and I fear that he's putting his prejudice ahead of the statement that I am making. Because were he to listen to the points I'm making, I think he would understand. And if he allows me to get to the point of the speech where I'm explicit about this, he will understand that the UK government's actions are not limited to what the Prime Minister has currently announced. He will hear that we are going to bring forward further legislation to further extend the measures available to us, and that we are absolutely not, make this absolutely clear, we are absolutely not ignoring the fact there has already been Russian incursion into Ukraine, which we want to halt, reverse, and then get those troops away from the Ukrainian border. So if he gives me the opportunity to, I will give it.
I'm just being very generous. Can I just press him on this point? Because I think many of us feel that the package of sanctions announced today is comparatively modest. Is my understanding that the government strategy is that further sanctions will come forward in the days ahead, even if Vladimir Putin takes no further steps and acts of aggression against the Ukraine? Or is it that the further steps that are undoubtedly being planned by him and colleagues within government will only come forward should there be an additional ratchet in the level of aggression shown towards Ukraine?
I thank my right honourable friend for giving me the opportunity to make clear our position. We intend, and if this hasn't become clear to the House, let me make it clear now. We intend to escalate these sanctions, to ratchet up these sanctions in response to what has already happened, in order to deter further aggression and in order to stimulate Putin to withdraw the troops from Ukraine, take them away from the border and send them back home to their families and barracks in other parts of Russia. I've got to make some progress, otherwise, honestly, we'll be hearing to...
Here's kind of give way. But just on that point, if I could just ask him to explain a little bit further. Obviously, the items of sanction today were under the existing legislation. What he's going to be proposing today is going to enable further types of sanctions. Is he proposing, obviously they will be worked on with foreign governments, will he also be looking at further sanctions from a UK perspective at the same time as he's looking at it with other countries?
Yes, and I'm going to progress, because some of the points that are being raised in interventions are actually covered in the speech. But I do recognise the huge levels of interest there is in the House from honourable members. This point, I think, will address a number of the points that have been raised. Fourthly, I had made 3 points previously. Fourthly, we will use Britain's economic and financial might to hit Russia's economy hard. The new sanctions regime that this SI brings in place, that we are debating today, is a vital part of this, but is not limited to the points set out in this SI. This legislation follows the main affirmative procedure set out in Section 55, Part 3 of the Sanctions and Anti-Money Laundering Act 2018. The statutory instrument amends the Russia Sanctions EU Exit Regulations 2019. It allows the government to impose sanctions on a much broader range of individuals and businesses who are or have been involved in, and I quote directly from the SI, obtaining a benefit from or supporting the government of Russia. And this includes, I've got to make some progress. This includes those that carry on business as a government of Russia affiliated entity, carry on business of economic significance to the Russian government, carry on business in a sector of strategic significance to the government of Russia, or own or control or act as a director, a trustee or equivalent of any of these entities. That is a huge scope of individuals and entities I give away.
I'd like to thank the Minister. Last time I saw him, he was about to enter the UN Security Council. I'd like to thank him how strongly he represented our country at that point. I'd like to ask him if the government is intending to release the Russia report on interference in the UK democracy, because surely some of the names contained there are exactly the sort of people that we should be sanctioning now, because they previously interfered on democracy and are clearly in hock to the Russian regime.
My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, has already said that we have brought forward measures that go further than the recommendations of that regime, and I'm going to impose a discipline on myself, even if the House doesn't impose a discipline on itself, to stay focused on this SI, because at this rate of interventions, I don't think we'll get there before the next. I'm going to let the gentleman.
I'm sure what the honourable gentleman was going to say would have been entirely agreeable, but can I take him specifically on what he's just said about the SI? Because I'm slightly concerned that the network of disinformation networks that Russia relies on, absolutely of strategic importance to them, such as the media outfits in this country, aren't actually going to be part of this SI package, because the Prime Minister said earlier, correctly, admittedly, that it's up to Ofcom whether RT can continue to broadcast. But surely we're all agreed that RT is not a normal news agency. It's not a news agency in any sense of the word that people understand it. Yeah. So how can we have a package of sanctions that allows those disinformation networks, crucial to Russia, to be dismantled in the UK?
Yeah. I share his frustration with the level of disinformation publicised or put out through Russia's state. However, I think we should be very, very careful before we advocate that a government closes down news channels that it disagrees with. I think we have a well-established and effective regulator. I think the right thing to do is to rely on that regulator to do the job it was designed to do. My right honourable friend.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend who's making steady progress through his speech. I want to help him slightly, and I have a pen in my right hand, and I'm going to ask him. There is one individual, interestingly, somebody that I've heard of before, but was raised by my honourable friend, the member for the Isle of Wight, and he's made a very good case. Could I ask him to write this name in on his instrument? Vladislav Surkov, who is the right-hand man to Putin, and I think my honourable friend referred to him as Putin's Rasputin. He has organised all of the eastern area, the Donbass area, a separatist movement, and continues to do so. Could he just write that name in to make sure at least one person responsible for what is going on there is now sanctioned? The pen is here. He's able to do it, he can.
thank my right honourable friend for his assistance. We are lucky that I have both officials in the box and Hansard note takers in the gallery who have taken note of that individual. I would remind the House that it is a long-standing convention that we don't discuss future targets of sanctions designation by name, to prevent those sanctions potentially being less effective than they might otherwise be, but I can assure him and the House that that name has been noted. I will make progress. In response to President Putin's decision last night to recognise sovereign regions of Ukraine as what he claimed, but we do not agree, to be independent states, and order troops into those areas, we today, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, today announced the initial set of sanctions. With immediate effect, we will freeze the assets of 5 Russian banks. 4 of these banks are involved in bankrolling the Russian occupation. These include Bank Rossiya, which is particularly close to the Kremlin, Black Sea Bank for Development and Reconstruction, IS Bank, and Gen Bank. The assets...
I'm very grateful. He's been very generous. I'm interested to know the criteria we have applied in choosing those 5 banks. Those 5 banks are relatively small banks. He talked earlier about measures, sanctions on entities of economic significance. The big banks in Russia are Sberbank, VTB. Why have we chosen the 5 small ones rather than the 2 largest ones?
I would make the point that the sanctions regime set out today are the initial range of sanctions, that we do reserve the right to extend the individuals and entities that come under this sanction package, and as I will make the point later on, very shortly, we do intend to extend the measures available to us. I've got to progress. I will be crucified otherwise. In addition, over the forthcoming weeks, we will extend the territorial sanctions imposed in response to the Crimean incursion by Russia to territory occupied by Russian forces in what they claim to be the breakaway republics of Donetsk and Luhansk. No UK individual or business will be able to deal with them until they are returned fully to Ukrainian control. We also intend to sanction the members of the Russian Duma and Federation Council who voted in recognition of the independence of Donetsk and Luhansk in flagrant violation of Ukraine's territorial sovereignty.
Because I wholly support that if that is what the government is intending to do. I just want to yes, I know he said that, but I'm just trying to check whether he's intending to do that under this piece of legislation, because there is a legal argument that he can't. Not least because the statutory instrument lists what is considered to be a member of the government of Russia, and it doesn't include members of the Duma, whereas in Section 3A, I think maybe what he's intending to use is anyone who promotes a policy or action which destabilises Ukraine. Just be helpful if he could explain that.
He is right that there is a difference, and those in this House understand there is a difference between a legislature and a government. The sanctions regime under which those sanctions will be brought forward is an extension of the pre-existing sanctions regime that we brought in response to the aggression going into Crimea, rather than this one. We are also ready to introduce new legislation, putting in place new measures which will prevent the Russian state from issuing sovereign debt on the UK markets and will curtail the ability of the Russian state and Russian companies to raise funds in UK markets, and further isolate Russian banks, which touches the point that my honourable friend raised, and their ability to operate not just in the UK but internationally. This will not end. I'm going to conclude. This will not end today. They all are. Go on.
Can I thank the Minister for giving way? The Intelligence and Security Committee report is nearly 3 years old now. Will the government please publish the report this week?
That's a very good question, but nothing to do with this SI. Should Russia stage any further invasion into Ukraine, we will not hesitate to implement a comprehensive and unprecedented additional package of sanctions in close coordination with our allies around the world. And that close coordination is important to ensure their maximum effectiveness. These measures will contain the ability... These measures will curtail the ability of the Russian state and Russian companies and Russian individuals to raise funds on our markets and further isolate Russian banks. We will keep ratcheting up the pressure, targeting more banks, more individuals, more companies that are significant to the Kremlin, touching on the point that a number of honourable and right honourable members have made. Russia has chosen a path, rather Vladimir Putin has chosen a path of international isolation. The measures that my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, announced today demonstrate that they will bear a cost for doing so, and if they do not step back, these measures will only increase. Russia's aggression against Ukraine is part of a long-term strategy. We must not give ground now or try to accommodate the illegitimate concerns that Russia has put forward. Their strategy of aggression would not end. They would not stop at the Ukraine. Instead, they would be emboldened. President Putin would simply focus on a new target. So we are absolutely resolute in our response. What we do now will shape European security for many years, and indeed will be viewed by other parts of the world and have an impact on security issues far more widely than Europe. So we must rise to the moment. We must stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Ukraine in their desire to protect their homeland and protect their freedom. We must and we will stand shoulder to shoulder with them, and I commend these regulations to the committee.
The question is motion number 6 on sanctions, as on the order paper. David Lammy.
Yeah.